9, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
All right, folks, how are you? It's always good to be with you. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, here with you on No Soundbites Allowed. And it seems we're getting a little bit of reverb here. All right, so folks, we wanted to talk about a lot of things. It's been an exciting week, and we're always very happy to be here with you. Hang on one second, just getting a little too much feedback here. So the reason why we enjoy this show. I enjoy my audience. You guys are great. You really are. And I do appreciate you every time that I get on and I have an opportunity to speak with you all. It's always wonderful, and I enjoy doing this. And we've got a lot to talk about here because we want to get into what's going on. We're about 30 days away from the June 26th and June 27th Democratic debates for the 2020 presidential nomination. There are approximately 16, 17 candidates that are confirmed. There's looking to be 20 people all in total that will be on the stage. We're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about obviously the comments from Robert Mueller yesterday when he came out and talked about the exoneration of the president and its consequences, which are very important and very different than what's being reported out there, I think, because there's a chain of events. This is a domino that started before and is continuing to happen now, and it's troubling where these set of dominoes lead to. Regardless of what you think of President Trump, regardless of anything else, there's a chain that's going on here, and we're seeing it in a lot of aspects of our government. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Obviously, if there's some with more time, we're also going to be talking about what's going on with the latest development with We Build the Wall. If you recall, we spoke with Jennifer Lawrence of We Build the Wall a month ago in April, and we're going to be following up that information and talking a little bit about what the latest development is in New Mexico on that private wall that's being built. There's been a lot of developments. We were talking about it on Tuesday. There has been a change in the situation, and I don't think really any of the news media is covering this, but we will because we think it's important. And if there's some time, I do want to go into something that was missed by a lot of people from Time Magazine, talking about millennials and how they're so offended and what should happen about that. And that came from Time Magazine, of all things. So it's a lot of stuff that we want to go over in the show. But I do want to start off, first of all and foremost, I want to say hello to my friends out there. That's at the Belmar Pub in Binghamton and also the Park Diner. Great locations. They are friends of ours. This is not a paid advertisement, but we do recommend them. We go to both. We go to all these locations and we love them. And they do a great job. Good food, good service, good people. We recommend it. If you're in the Binghamton area, please drop on by both of them. Mention that Mike Voss brought you to their attention. And I think you'll enjoy it. And please let me know how you enjoy your experience there. So with that said, let's get into the first things first, okay? And we're going to talk about what's going on with the Democratic debate. We've been following this for quite some time now. Back in October of 2018, we had written an article over at the MVASS.com, that website, which is the Voss Political Commentary site, and where we have over a decade of information, 2 million words in articles we've written there. And we were talking about what we believe will be the prediction, who will be the Democratic choice, the nominee to go up against President Donald Trump in 2020. And at that time, we had said it would be going with the gender and identity politics of the Democratic Socialist Party. We were looking at an all-woman lineup. And we had said that it would be either Elizabeth Warren or it would be Kirsten Gillibrand or it would be Kamala Harris, each of them being senators currently in office. And a lot of people have been wondering about that. There's been a lot of back and forth. We've seen a lot of other names come into the race. We've been following how they've all been doing. And the fact is that the leader of the Democratic Party right now is either Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. They are the top two people in the Democratic Party at this time. So depending on who you're asking, that's who it's going to be. And we apologize if any of this is dropping off. There seems to be an issue with the internet, and we're trying to adjust our technology as best we can for that. It's beyond us, though, on the internet connection. So we apologize if anything drops out. But what we're seeing is that the latest news, in a month, all of the candidates are going to be showing up on a stage and they're going to be speaking. And we see that, it's a mess. It is considered a big mess. In fact, if you're looking at the latest article, which came out by Politico today, which had its title changed. It initially had a title of the first 2020 Democratic debate puts Democrats on edge, and they've now changed the title to First Debate Sparks Democratic Scramble. And it's probably because the first title of this article was a bit negative, and somewhere between 9 a.m. and the show starting here at 1 p.m., they changed that title. Very interesting that Politico is being motivated that way. But in the article, two things that come up that I think are of interest is that one of the things they're highlighting, and I'm quoting from the article, we are preparing a cross-section. There are a lot of candidates who are similar, who have similar positions on the big issues. We know where a lot of our peers are coming from. This is a quote from an advisor for the California Representative Eric Swalwell, who's running for the 2020 election that no one's talking about. And for the lesser-known candidates such as Swalwell, the article continues, the debate presents an opportunity to gain much-needed step in the primary. So that's what Politico is announcing. And what Politico is mentioning here is that this entire thing is a mess. It is a mess. You have 20 candidates, actually 23 candidates, 33 if you include those who are not announced at this time, who are running all over the place. And I have to say, it's not that they're just candidates who have similar positions. They have the same exact position. There is no difference. Eric Swalwell is against guns. So is Cory Booker. So is Kamala Harris. So is Joe Biden. They're against the Second Amendment. They want to take away your right to have a firearm. There is no difference in the candidates on this. In fact, you can look at all of the issues. Cory Booker's appealing to the gender identity politics in the same way that Kirsten Gillibrand is appealing to the same group. And so we're not seeing any difference. You can pick any issue you want. They all come together. And that's why at the end of the article, we see that the quote that they're using, which is coming from Mr. Reyes, his name was up earlier, they ended with the quote, "You've got a little bit of a whack-a-mole situation, and that's going to play out on the stage." Well, yeah, because we're looking at a situation where you have 6, maybe 7 candidates. Well, rather, the candidates are going to look at 6 to 7 minutes. That's the difference. Democrats are being asked in the first debate to start picking and choosing their candidates based on 6 or 7 minutes of a debate, which means 1 or 2 questions. Depending on how each of the candidates answers 1 to 2 questions on average, Democrats, rank and file, are supposed to figure out who they like. And that's going to be really sad because you're not going to see really any true difference being made. But what can we say about this? What does it really mean to us? Well, if we're looking at the polling that's out there, it says a lot. We know what's going to happen. Biden and Sanders are going to get the majority of the attention. And that's because Biden leads nationally, according to, this is from Real Clear Politics, a poll the average poll of every poll in the nation, we see that Biden's leading with 34.8%. Sanders is in second with 16.4%. That's not going to change. They're going to continue to be 1 and 2. Now, what may change is for everyone else. People like Williamson, Ryan, Gabbard, Andrew Yang, Julius Castro, Senator Klobuchar. You're going to see people like them, even Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, most likely. They're going to all drop out. They're going to disappear relatively quickly. I mean, these are all people who have 1% or less. 1% or less. I mean, to look at Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who was one of our picks of the three, one of the individuals we thought might make it to the 2020 race, to the nomination, she's at 0.4%. This is after Cory Booker has gone out and made an effort to keep her in the race and get her into the debate because she couldn't do it. She had no support, so she wasn't able to do it. And so he went out and he purposefully pushed her name, which has had mixed reviews. She actually dropped from 0.8% to 0.4% in national attention. She's dead in the water. The effort from Booker, while in some individual polling recently has put him at 3%, he actually went down from 2.4% nationally on the average to 2.2%. He's losing ground for trying to support Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. So we're seeing a big change. And if you're wondering about de Blasio, he's at 0.3%. He's not a factor. So all the big names that we've heard about, really, there's only about 5 people who really matter in this. They're going to get all the real attention. And everyone else is going to be thrown out. And maybe 1 or 2 of them will move up a bit, but nowhere in any real significance. I don't expect Buttigieg to maintain his position. Robert O'Rourke, the fake Hispanic, is going to be bounced out of this pretty quick. So is Booker. We're going to see most of these guys gone. The real race is essentially between Biden, Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris. There's your big race. And I believe that Warren and Harris are going to wind up being the big winners on that. You may disagree, but I see that coming. And if we're going by the betting pools that are out there on this, well, the betting pools have a very interesting point of view on it as well. According to the betting pools, Joe Biden is the big winner. He's and this is according to Predict It, who will win the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. And it's not an official poll, but it's the way people are betting on this. And this is where the odds are coming in. So Biden has a 2-to-1 lead essentially on Bernie Sanders, who's in second place. Buttigieg at the moment is at 16 cents. He's moved along a lot. If you've been following the show, we've been checking this on a regular basis. He's moved up about 5, 6, 7 places. So he's been doing really well. But quite honestly, he's right there with Elizabeth Warren, who consistently since October has been maintaining roughly a 3rd place position. She's very strong in this race. And Kamala Harris, who's been roughly running about 4th or 5th place, remains in the top 5 in terms of the betting pools, which we see reflected in the national polling. Andrew Yang, a gentleman who has no real claim to fame other than being the Asian in the race, and that's kind of dubious that his big claim to fame is he's the Asian in the race. That's it. He's up there with Beto O'Rourke. His big claim to fame is he lost to the guy who lost to President Trump by 3%. That's it. Beto O'Rourke, a fake Hispanic, someone who's trying to pretend to be Hispanic even though he's not. He's Irish. His name is Robert, is out there and he's got no claim, and he's right there with Andrew Yang, a guy who wants to just give people free money, although he has a lot of conditions on that, and he doesn't want to discuss that with the public, but that's the fact. You got Cory Booker, who has no claim to fame other than he assaulted a woman in his youth, which he's spoken about publicly, and that he wants to put a woman as vice president. Hillary Clinton still remains very popular, amazingly. I don't know what's going on with that for Democrats. I mean, Hillary Clinton, who has no hope whatsoever, is still higher than Kirsten Gillibrand or Amy Klobuchar. It's really, really sad. What do we expect that we're going to see at the end of the day with all of this? You're going to see a mess. I feel bad for the rank and file Democrats. I really feel bad for the rank and file Democrats because there's no way to really understand what's going on with these candidates in 6 to 7 minutes. And no one should have to only have 6 to 7 minutes, basically 1 to 2 questions to decide whether they think this is a person who should be president or not. It's not fair to the candidates. It's not fair to the public. It really isn't. And I think we deserve to know more about these candidates so that we can make a true evaluation about who is even worthy of having the chance to run. I mean, it's ridiculous. And no wonder they call it a whack-a-mole, according to Politico. It is the most ridiculous example of failure that I've seen in quite some time. I wasn't very happy with the Republican race in 2016 for having a similar situation. There's no way to properly evaluate some of the best choices that are out there. Not when you have virtually no time being given to the candidates to be able to make an answer. It's basically, I didn't screw up in giving an answer. I didn't pause. I didn't stumble in my words, which is a problem for Biden and for Sanders both. But if they don't stumble, they don't have a Governor Perry kind of moment, then they get to move on to the next level, even though they may be a horrible choice. That's not good. And that's what Democrats are looking at. So the choice is going to be made on how do you look on stage and do you stumble when you answer a question? And you may only have one question. That's ridiculous. That doesn't mean that they're the best candidate. It's not the way to evaluate someone, at least not in my opinion. But you may disagree. So I find that quite interesting, and I think it's going to be a complete mess. And I think it is a whack-a-mole situation. And I think that Democrats will be disappointed no matter what happens. And I think the polling's showing us exactly where it's going. We got a 4-way race. Biden, Sanders, Warren, Harris. There it is. And I think because of the gender identity politics that are promoted by the Democratic Party, the fact that we've seen everybody apologize for being white, rich, white, old men in terms of the leaders, and everyone else apologizing that they're either white or they're male or they're straight, I think that says a lot about where we're going to see this wind up. That it's going to be women. It's going to be an all-woman ticket against the evil, horrible, oppressive Republicans, which means Donald Trump, and that's going to be the race. And it's sad. If that's what 2020 is being decided on, that's very sad. But let's go on to the next thing, which I wanted to talk about a little bit. And I will get to Jennifer L. Lawrence and We Build the Wall. She's not our guest today, but we do want to reference that we had spoken to them and talk a little bit about that very shortly. But as we always do, we want to talk about shame. The Game of Thrones Shame Award for the show goes to Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller, the now former U.S. Special Counsel, who did the ever infamous Mueller report, which we were told was the answer. It was the answer the Democrats were looking for to prove that President Trump needs to be impeached. No crimes were found. There is nothing alleged. That's just not the case. So where are we with this? Because everyone's talking about it now. Because yesterday, Robert Mueller came out and said, hey, guess what? There's nothing new to be said here. The report is the report. And so where are we going to go? Yeah, that's it. There's no way to prove it. But what he went on to say is that the result, and this is it, Hillary Clinton, under Comey, we found that Hillary Clinton is guilty but shouldn't be charged, and that Mueller says Trump is not guilty, but he should be charged. That's what was the result of yesterday's conversation, and it's insulting. And we see an article here, which was in the National Review, and it says, not exonerated is not a standard any free country should accept. And I agree with that. It came out yesterday by Charles Koch on May 29th. You can look it up on the National Review yourself. And he's right. Let's think about this. The fact is, there is no reason why we should be having this conversation. Robert Mueller should not be talking about whether or not the president's exonerated. That's not important. Lest we all forget, you are innocent until found guilty. If there is a charge, then that charge should be placed against you. You go to courts and you decide whether you are found either innocent or guilty. It is not supposed to be like what we're seeing here with accusation equaling guilt. And that, nor should we hear from our teams, our judicial department, that we have a suspect who is guilty and is not being charged, or on the other side, that we have a suspect that is not guilty and should be charged. That is not the job of any of these individuals. I recently tweeted to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, who took the position that because President Trump was not exonerated of not having a charge against him, that this somehow makes him guilty. Quite honestly, that's not how it works. And she forgets, oh, it's on Congress now. No, it's not. Congress is legislative. They create laws. They don't prosecute laws. That's the judiciary. Congress does not get to enforce laws. That's the executive branch. Congress creates laws. If they think the laws are incorrect, then they should do that. Now, they have some oversight, absolutely, but they don't need to expand their role into prosecution or into enforcement of laws. That's not what they are there for. And to have a witch hunt where we are going through as a nation, 4 or 5 investigations now, tens of millions of dollars, searching for a problem to justify why we're searching for the problem. That's wrong. And this is a domino effect. And we see this in a lot of other things as well. It's not just something we're seeing. Accusation equals guilt. We saw this with the Kavanaugh. We saw this with the Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh, when he was going through his appointment. We saw in there accusations equal guilt, and somehow that was supposed to stop someone. That's not the way our system is supposed to work. That is wrong. That is just very wrong, because it denies people their rights. And we see this in a lot of things, because not only was it affecting the Supreme Court pick, but now we're seeing that affect the regular people. If you go to KDRV.com, that's the News Channel 12 ABC out in California, we see that laws like the red flag law that was put out there, and I've talked a lot about this, that law, which assumes that you are guilty of a non-crime and you should be punished. And in California, they're expanding that law. That's according, and this was on May 21st, that it was out there, and not a lot of people have talked about this, but California is taking the same steps that New York State has taken on the red flag legislation, expanding the number of people to allow employers to be able to charge their workers with a non-crime and say, okay, you own a gun and you may be dangerous, so we should take away your Second Amendment rights, which could also take away your family, take away your children. What is this? Where are we going? And I spoke about this in one of many articles that I wrote about this over at the Voss Political Commentary, and you can check this out for yourself. In particular, I'm pointing out the Voss Political Commentary article, which was written on, this one was on December 4th of 2018, the red flag to your rights awaiting the next crisis. And we see this over and over and over again, that every time there is a crisis, someone comes to take your rights. And that's because and I quote myself here, politics is a game of chess with pieces being placed well in advance. Given the right crisis with enough eyeballs provided by major news media, people with a proper mindset by social media, and that game shifts to a speed chess match. So let's apply that. Let's think about that. In the same way that the red flag laws are being manipulated to emotionally affect people and cause them to move forward, we're seeing the same thing with the Mueller report. It's the same thing we saw with Justice Kavanaugh and the hearings in the Senate. We're having media put this emotional baggage, this emotional impetus on people that, well, they must be guilty. They must be guilty. We heard this with Me Too as well. You must be guilty because you have been accused. And yet, you never get due process. There is no day in there is no day in court. There is no opportunity to prove yourself innocent because no crime has been committed. And again, this goes back to what we're hearing about Robert Mueller. The president is not exonerated. He doesn't have to be exonerated. There is no crime. There is no charge. He is innocent. You don't need to be exonerated to be innocent. By definition, if you are innocent, you are exonerated. There is nothing to charge you with. There is no guilt to question. And we see the same thing with the red flag laws. You're being punished for a non-crime. You've done nothing wrong, and therefore you are innocent. There is nothing to exonerate your name from. There is nothing to go to court about. You haven't done anything, and yet you're being punished. This is the problem that we have right now. Accusation equals guilt. Due process is relegated to someone else's feelings. The feelings that the news media have about a situation, the feelings that political elites have about a situation, how some fraction, some fringe political organization like Citizen Action or Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT, or Indivisible New York, groups and organizations that are fringe groups that scream at their top of their lungs that someone should be guilty because they feel like someone is guilty. And that's the problem. That's not guilt. That's not breaking a law. I've had this conversation with a lot of people. If you can show that there was a law that was broken, then I can understand trying to go for impeachment. I can understand having the argument. But this isn't like Bill Clinton. There is no is here. There is no definition of is that's in dispute. There is no crime. There is no collusion. And therefore, the president is innocent. You don't need to say that he's not exonerated. Because in saying he's not exonerated, you assume that there must be some guilt that exists, even though no proof of it has been found. In 5 investigations, over 2.5 years, tens of millions of dollars being spent, there is no evidence. Same thing with the red flag. There is no evidence. Someone feels like you could be dangerous. There is no evidence. And yet you are punished. We are going down a dangerous path where due process is no longer the rule of the nation, and that is a problem for everyone. Not just progressives, not just for the right, not for the left, whether you're a libertarian, a conservative, a Democrat, a Republican, it doesn't matter. If there is no due process, and the standard is whether or not someone feels like you are doing something wrong, and therefore you can be punished for that without having a trial or your day in court, especially if you don't get your chance to defend yourself, then the system has failed you and the system is broken. It has not become irrevocably broken yet, but it is well on its way. And we should be aware of that, and we should be afraid of that. And moments like what Robert Mueller is doing and how his report is being used is leading us down that path, that dangerous path, where accusation equals guilt, Due process is not necessary, and you are punished without cause. That is the problem for the nation. But let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
You tell me you're different. You say you got some things and you're working on it. Oh, but I never listen. No, was too busy thinking you're the perfect one. It's such a mystery, 'cause usually I'm looking for a reason to stay. But who would have believed that here I be and I just can't look away? Oh, you tried to give me a warning. Say watch your step before you fall too hard. You tell me I'm crazy, I say not crazy enough. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy about us. And I know that it's true, baby, it may be too much. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy in love. Get if you're thinking you're alone and now you feel. I wanna show you the difference. If you let me, I could show you something real. It's such a mystery, 'cause usually I'm looking for a reason to stay. Oh, yeah. But who would have believed that here I be and I just can't look away? Oh, you tried to give me a warning. Say watch your step before you fall too hard. You tell me I'm crazy, I say not crazy enough. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy about us. And I know that it's true, baby, it may be too much. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy in love. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, I'm crazy for you. Never giving up on you. You tried to give me a warning. Say watch your step before you fall too hard. You tell me I'm crazy, I say not crazy enough. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy about us. And I know that it's true, baby, it may be too much. But I'm crazy for you, crazy, crazy in love. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you. Never giving up, never giving up, never giving up, never giving up on you.
All right, folks, we're back here at No Soundbites Allowed, the very popular political podcast. We enjoy the fact that you are here with us, and we are live on, add that off, the Exceptional Conservative Network, where we are happy to be here along with many of our co-hosts on the program, on the channel, which would be Ken McClinton, Dr. Jane Ruby, Randy, so many others. It's just a huge list of individuals, and we invite you to check out the programs that are on the channel. Also, if you are in the Binghamton area, please drop by the Belmar Pub and or the Park Diner. These are friends of ours. This is not a paid advertisement. We enjoy the Belmar Pub and the Park Diner. They are great locations, great food and service, and we advise you to check it out. So, and I noticed that it's really interesting that somehow, whenever we're live, we're getting so much of a drop-off and problems with the internet for no apparent reason. And I think that has a lot to do with Spectrum, and they're trying to sell me new services that I'm rejecting. And ever since I've said, no, I don't want their additional services and extra charges, we've been seeing that the internet's been very difficult in this area. Thank you, Spectrum, for your great service in making it spotty every time I say, no, I don't want your additional services and additional charges. But that's a local issue, and I won't focus on that. It's just very odd how when you say, no, I don't want additional things to charge, and I don't want your extra services, that suddenly your service becomes spotty, to say the least. But that being said, we were talking in the last episode, in the last subjects, we were covering about what's going on with the 2020 election, where we're talking a little bit about the loss of due process and how we're going down that path with the Mueller report continuing a process we've been seeing for quite some time now. But one of the other things that we've seen that's been going on lately is the question of the southern border and the southern border wall. If you may recall, back in April, we had a conversation with Jennifer L. Lawrence, who is the communications director for We Build the Wall. This is an organization that privately raised funds, about $22 million, to be able to build a private wall down on our southern border to protect the people and to slow down the amount of drugs and illegal aliens and disease that are coming across our southern border. And I say disease because the correlation seems to be that the more illegal aliens we have crossing our border recently, the higher the infectious diseases that are expanding throughout our nation. Measles was basically non-existent. And suddenly we started having 15,000 illegal aliens from places across the world that have lower medical standards for various reasons. And they're coming into our nation illegally, against our laws, breaking into the country, and suddenly we have outbreaks of measles. It looks like a correlation. Are they the same? Are they correlated? I can't promise that, but it sounds like it to me. That's just how I see it. But so the We Build a Wall has gone out, and they decided that they were going to privately build a wall in New Mexico. And they had mentioned it to us in April, and I do recommend checking out that article. And when they did so, when they went down there and did that, we see that they were in Sunland Park, New Mexico, and they started to build a wall and over the weekend, over the Memorial Day weekend, and they were getting it put up for about $6 million, roughly, which is way cheaper than what the government pays to do it. So again, private individuals are doing what the government can do, and they're doing it better. And the New Mexico mayor stopped it. He told them to stop building the wall. Now, this is really interesting because this was on private property, and it was privately paid for to build. And according to different reports, the city of New Mexico, of Sunland Park, New Mexico, was aware of this. They had inspectors on site as the wall is being built. And then they decided they wanted to stop it. And this is according to the Newsweek article, which comes from, which is New Mexico mayor orders group building border wall on private land to stop construction. Now, that's really weird. But the latest update on this, which most people are not seeing across the nation, is that according to Brian Kolfage, who is part of the Build the Wall, he's the president and founder, that as of today, approximately 6 hours ago, they had moved forward that the permits that they were originally told did not exist are now existing and reissued, and that the permits were reissued. The injunction, the order to stop by the mayor of Sunland Park, New Mexico, gone. Suddenly they can go back to work. Sounds like politics to me. Sounds like the mayor thought he would get a lot of support from Democrats in his city to stop the wall, to not have construction. And the people of Sunland Park, I believe, said no, because there was evidence, and it's alleged by Brian Colfage, that the wall was being effective, that they have video of illegal aliens approaching to try and cross the border, seeing the wall, and turning away. Does that mean they didn't come across the border? Who knows? Maybe they went to a different part. But for that half-mile stretch on which they are putting construction, those illegal aliens did not come forward, according, again, to Brian Colfage. And this is why he has complied. He states he's complied with regulations, and he's going forward. And there was supposed to be a support rally for We Build a Wall in Sunland Park later today, may be happening as we speak. We're going to try and get them back on. Hopefully Jennifer L. Lawrence or Brian Colfage will be coming onto the show soon to talk a little bit more about this and to let us know what are the latest updates on this. Even though most of the media doesn't want to address it, it looks like private individuals are doing what the government is not being allowed to do, and that the public sentiment is in favor of this, even though the news media is saying, no, it's not. That's what it looks like from my vantage point. Now, you may disagree. We are looking forward to hearing what you think about this, because obviously you matter. Your voice matters. And we want to hear what you think, because you are important. Your voice is important on all of these issues and so many, many more. And we want to be able to speak with you about it. So please do let us know. And we'll ask you the question as is: do you believe that the 2020 debate for the Democratic nomination on June 26th and 27th, will that be a circus? Is 7 minutes enough time to figure out who is your favorite candidate, who should be the nominee for the Democratic Party? Do you believe that that the nomination in 2020 will go to just women based on the gender and identity politics? Has the fact that both Biden and many of the other candidates, Buttigieg, O'Rourke, have come out and said that they apologize for being white and men and old in many cases. Does that affect your decision on who should be the candidate? We would ask you, and looking at the due process question, does accusation equal guilt? Is that enough for you? Is someone being accused of being guilty enough? Do you have to be exonerated for a non-crime? Is that the way the system should work? That even though you have no charges, no evidence, that you should have to prove that you're innocent of something that didn't happen, or there is no evidence that it happened? Like with the red flag laws, should you be punished for having a possession just because someone else doesn't like that possession, because someone else says you could be dangerous at some point? Not because there's evidence of it, not because this has happened, but because they accuse you of that. Even though we've seen that these laws, these red flag laws in California, in Illinois, in New York State, across the nation, have failed every single time. They have consistently and repeatedly failed. They do not work. They have not stopped a mass shooting or even regular gun violence. Look at Chicago. just over this weekend. 7 people killed, 35 people shot. 39 people shot. The same as in 2017, same as in 2018. No one has benefited. So that's a good question. And we asked that question because it's important. But one last thing I wanted to go over with you in the final minutes here today. There was an interesting article just a couple of days ago. It was back on, actually, a little while ago. It was back in March. Back in March, there was an article by Time magazine that it's time to teach young people how to stop being so offended. That's the title of it. And you may have seen it. And we want to go over that a little bit. Here it is. And this is the article in Time magazine. It was done by, and I can't pronounce her name, but Urshad Manji. And she goes in and talking about how young people need to stop being so offended. I think that's interesting. I didn't really see it at the time that it came out, and I think it's really interesting. We need to really have more conversation about this. Why are kids so offended? Because they're told their feelings are so important. And that's one of the big things. And even in this Time magazine piece, one of the biggest things they say is, you shouldn't be offended. Or rather, you should be open to being offended, because in being offended, you learn. Because if you're exchanging an idea, that idea may offend you. You may not like it. It may not be something you agree with. That doesn't mean that you can't hear it. Now, there is a difference between hate speech, well, actually, hate itself. If someone is coming at you and they're attacking you because of your race, your religion, your sex, if they're attacking you, that's a different thing. But if someone says, I believe that the Second Amendment is important and we should be able to defend ourselves rather than be Venezuela, that's an important viewpoint. Now, if you don't agree with that, if you find it offensive, that doesn't let you learn anything. If you're offended by the idea that someone may own a firearm, that doesn't let you understand why they feel there's a need for it. And more importantly, why our founding fathers and in the Constitution, it was important. And it's an essential, inalienable right. And if you're avoiding that, you'll never learn why. If you're shutting down because you consider that's offensive, you'll never understand. If you think that the border wall is offensive, that it's somehow racist, somehow, because a wall is not racist. It can't be. It's an inanimate object. But if you believe the idea of a wall is racist for some reason, and you're offended by that, and you can't hear why someone would say, well, it helps to protect the people on the other side of the wall from those people who would break the law, people who may be spreading infectious disease through no fault of their own, but they are, or that they are disrupting the economy of the place that they're going to, or they're disrupting the society and the social equilibrium of the area that they're going to, and that they are violating the social contract of law by breaking those laws consciously, willfully, then you haven't learned anything if you can't have that conversation. And maybe you have an argument why this shouldn't be the case. Maybe. Both sides have to be able to hear, and you have to be willing to be offended. And this show, I'm sure, from time to time, says things that someone will be offended by. Whether you're a Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, doesn't matter, libertarian, you're going to find things that you're not going to like here. But at least you understand why we're saying it, where we're getting the source of information, and you're able to absorb it. And we're always open to hearing your voice and say, well, I agree or I disagree. Because we're willing to be offended by hearing something we don't like and then making a decision based on that information and making sure that our facts are correct. That's the important thing. It's kind of like our conversation on Tuesday when we were talking about abortion. And when we were speaking about the abortion issue, we asked, we've seen a lot of people paying attention to the article, to the conversation. And if you missed it, please do check it out. It's on our YouTube channel, and we'll reference it and link it here. But when we're talking about that and the question of eugenics, especially with the advances of science, allowing us to understand or guess at what could be potential negatives for a young child, whether it's speech impediments or birth defects, including Down syndrome and others, or possible susceptibility to diseases and or addictions. Is that a reason worth aborting a child? And we're seeing a lot of people pay attention to it. But where's the voice? We have to be willing to offend people. No one wants to comment because, and we've heard this from people privately, that they don't want to offend anyone with their viewpoint, whether they agree or disagree. And if you're worried about that, you'll never answer the question is this something we should do? Is abortion based on eugenics, where you're eliminating unborn children because of your belief that that child may have a difficult life based on the potential of having a defect? Is that morally correct? Is that something we should allow as a society? And if we can't have that discussion, then these things can happen. And that's how you get to situations where some human being is not valued as a human being. And if they're not valued as a human being, you can kill them, which happens with abortion. But we've also seen that in post-abortion situations throughout history, where those individuals born with defects are killed. You can go back as far as the Spartans. You can go back even further than that. You can go as recent as World War II, and even in the Khmer Rouge and in Laos. It's happened throughout history. If we don't have the conversation, if we're not willing to be offended by the conversation, we can't answer the question. And hopefully this show inspires people to answer the question, to respond to us. Whether you agree or disagree, that's perfectly fine. That's up to you. Our question isn't whether you agree with us. Our question is, let's have the answer. Let's have that discussion, respectfully, but have the discussion and be willing to be offended. Because without that, there is nothing. And in the vacuum, when people are being silent, when people turn their backs to difficult questions, the people who answer those questions aren't necessarily the best people. They don't necessarily have the best intentions. We've seen that through history as well. That some of the people who speak the loudest aren't necessarily looking for the best answer. They have an agenda. And if we don't speak up against that agenda, we may not like the results of it, which I believe is happening with the loss of due process in our government right now because of some people having feelings and being offended by the results that they are getting, whether that's for impeaching the president or red flag legislation or picking a Supreme Justice. There is a lot of this going on, and that's dangerous. We believe. On this show, that's what we believe. You may disagree, but we want to hear from you. And you can always call into the show. We're going to be here on Saturday at 12 noon, our regularly scheduled program. At 12 noon until 2 p.m., we'll be talking. We hope to have on a couple of guests. That is the same day that Shannon Wright, who is the candidate for the mayor of the city of Baltimore. We had done an interview with her. She should be back on the show after her announcement, her official launch of her campaign for the mayor of Baltimore. We hope to have her back on. We're looking forward to possibly speaking with We Build the Wall with either Jennifer Lawrence or Brian Kolfage again, and speaking with them about what's going on in New Mexico and where else they plan to build the wall on our southern border, because it's not just in New Mexico. There are other locations, and how they can do this for less than the government is doing it and faster than the government is doing it. And We, of course, are going to follow up as we get closer and closer to the first Democratic debate. We want to hear what you think is the best Democratic candidate. And we'll talk about all this and maybe even revisit the abortion question on Saturday if there's enough demand. And we'll put out a poll about this. And if you're interested, we'll talk about that. And we want to hear from you. You can reach us on our phone, 607-242-9247. You can send us a tweet. You can send us a message on Facebook or on YouTube and let us know where you stand. And we'll include that in the show and we'll talk about it. But with that said, we're finishing up the show and we thank you for all the time you spend with us. We do appreciate each and every one of you, the time that you spend with us here on the program. It is invaluable. We appreciate it. We thank you. And hopefully if you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, talk about it with friends. And if you can, donate Donate $1, donate $2. It helps keep lights on, and we do appreciate that as well. So with that said, I thank you, and I hope everyone's going to have a great day.